The bit that I want to read is this bit. Yeah? So it's this bit. You ready?
Go ahead.
So Heraclius remarked that the sovereignty of the Arabs had arrived. Heraclius then wrote a letter to his friend in Rome, who was as good as Heraclius in knowledge. Heraclius then left for Homs, a town in Syria, and stayed there until there was a reply from his friend, who agreed with him in his opinion about the emergence of the prophet and the fact that he was a prophet. On that, Heraclius invited all the heads of the Byzantines to assemble in his palace at Homs. When they assembled, he ordered that all the doors of his palace be closed, and then he came out and said, O Byzantines, if success is your desire, and if you seek right guidance and want your empire to remain, then give your pledge of allegiance to this prophet. So here's my question. This hadith is claiming to have access to a private correspondence and a private meeting of the Roman elites. Who in the Isnad chain was in that meeting? Who had access to that letter?
To be honest, I would have no idea.
I've looked at all the names in the Isnads, right? And when you look at all the names in the Isnads and you look up their biographies, right, none of them could be. None of them. So in other words, what we have is a Sahih Bukhari hadith that is a forgery and a lie.
Okay.
Now, do you understand the implications of using Sahih al-Bukhari to interpret the Quran when Sahih al-Bukhari is full of forgeries and lies?
To be honest, my knowledge is a bit limited in this, so when in regards to Isnad, there have to be a chain of narration that's going back to the Prophet ﷺ.
Yeah.
That's how much I can take it forward from that.
Right.
But I'm not a very ilm in hadith, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, as someone who has studied it, but you can think logically, can't you?
Yeah, of course, yeah.
Right. So for someone to have had access to a private correspondence of a Roman emperor, yeah, then he must have had some kind of access to the internal court of Rome.
Okay.
But when you can do this yourself, bro, go and look up the Isnad to Sahih al-Bukhari 7.
Check it out, I don't know.
Go and look at the biographies of all of those people. I've already done this exercise.
Okay.
None of them would have had access to the internal workings of the Roman Empire.
Sure, I'll have a look into this.
Right, so you've got a lie in the hadiths.
Okay.
Now, just think hypothetically with me. If my thesis is correct, and this is a lie in Sahih al-Bukhari, what are the implications for the reliability of Sahih al-Bukhari?
Sure, I'll have a look into this more.
All right, I'd like to give you a gift then, just as a goodwill gesture. Thank you for talking to me. So I'd like to just give you a gift. There we go.
Thank you.
You look after yourself. Take care. All right, let's see if someone else can answer my question.
Okay.
Number 7, we read this, right? Heraclius remarked that the sovereignty of the Arabs had appeared, and Heraclius then wrote a letter to his friend in Rome, who was as good as Heraclius in knowledge. Heraclius then left for Homs, the town in Syria, and stayed there till he received a reply of his letter from his friend, who agreed with him in his opinion about the emergence of the prophet and the fact that he was a prophet. So here's my question. How could anyone connected to the hadith have gained access to this private letter?
I'm not sure, to be honest.
Is it likely that someone could have gained access to the private correspondence of the leader of their enemies?
I'm not sure, because I'm not an expert on it.
Use your reasoning, use your logic. This is a private letter between the Roman emperor and his friend back in Rome. They're writing to one another at a time when the Romans were in control of their territory.
Okay.
So before the Battle of Yarmouk, right?
Okay.
And yet the hadith is saying that that they have access to this private correspondence between Heraclius and his friend.
Who has the access to it?
Yeah, exactly. Who has the access to it?
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm saying to you, no one could have had the access to it. Because when you look at the Isnad chain, and when you do look into their biographies, the first one of the chain was a child. The others They weren't involved in the Roman court.
Okay.
And so this story is fictitious. It's a lie, in other words, it's a forgery.
It might be so.
Right, now what's the implications of having a forgery in Sahih al-Bukhari? What are the implications of that?
Something went wrong.
But it does have bigger implications, doesn't it? Because you use Sahih al-Bukhari and you use the Hadiths to interpret the Quran.
I cannot respond to you because I'm not an expert on it. So
I mean, everyone's going to say that, but...
yeah, but I have to read it. I have to read more too, so I can respond to you.
Right, so hypothetically, I know you can't respond,
Okay.
but you can do a hypothetical experiment. That you can do.
Okay.
So let's imagine that you go away and do the research,
Yeah.
and you find out that I'm right. That actually, this hadith is a forgery.
Okay.
Considering the science of hadith, and the fact that this has been declared by Muslim scholars for 1400 years to be reliable, trustworthy hadith. What is that saying about the failure of the science of hadith?
If there is like one failure, it doesn't mean that everything he fails on. All the hadith he wrote.
But the science...
There is one thing failure. It's not mean that everything is false.
Right, but what it does mean, I agree. It doesn't mean that because one thing failed, that therefore everything failed.
Yeah.
But if one thing failed, it means that anyone in that isnad chain connected to that failed hadith can no longer be trusted with certainty for any hadith that they are involved in.
Yeah.
Yeah. Secondly, it means that the science of hadith has failed, and that you can't be certain where it has failed and where it hasn't failed.
Only on one hadith you're talking about.
Yeah, I'm giving one example. There's other examples. I'm giving one example. My point to you is that if it failed in one place, then you don't know where else it has failed.
Yes, of course.
And so the whole corpus becomes questionable.
Yes, of course.
Right.
Yeah.
So then the hadith itself, Sahih al-Bukhari itself, can no longer be graded as Sahih.
It's like for my knowledge is that not all of the hadith are like all of them are like 100% correct.
Yeah.
Some of them we have like 100% correct. Some of them might be and might not. So we as a Muslim we do not take all of them
Yeah.
as an example of correct hadith.
Right.
Yeah.
But what do you call those hadith that you don't trust?
I'm not sure how to say it in English.
Da'if.
Da'if, yeah.
Yeah, you can speak Arabic.
Yeah, okay,
Right?
da'if.
So when you find a hadith that you don't trust, you call it da'if, don't you?
Yeah,
What do you call it when you find a hadith that you can trust?
Sahih.
Sahih.
Yeah.
This is from Sahih. This is Sahih Bukhari, not da'if Bukhari.
What was the number of the hadith?
Sahih al-Bukhari number 7.
ايش الحديث قال لك؟
والله انا ما فهمته بس ايوه طبعا.
Christian. علم الكتاب.
ايش هو الحديث اللي قال؟
قال رقم 7.
Nasari.
What's the hadith?
What?
What's the hadith?
Hadith number 7.
Yeah, what's
Sahih al-Bukhari number 7. You can find it on sunnah.com.
He has this.
I've got it on my phone. Sunnah.com.
Okay.
Sunnah.com,
Yeah.
Hadith number 7, Sahih al-Bukhari.
Okay.
Yeah? So, my issue is, did you hear the issue? Do you want me to repeat the issue?
Yes, if you have
Okay.
time.
Yeah, of course. So basically,
Yeah.
bear with us 1 second. Right. So I'm going to read the relevant part, okay?
Okay.
After hearing that Heraclius remarked that the sovereignty of the Arabs had appeared, Heraclius then wrote a letter to his friend in Rome, who was as good as Heraclius in knowledge. Heraclius then left for Homs, a town in Syria, and stayed there till he received the reply of his letter from his friend, who agreed with him in his opinion about the emergence of the prophet and the fact that he was a prophet. On that, Heraclius invited all the heads of the Byzantines to assemble in his palace at Homs. When they assembled, he ordered that all the doors of his palace be closed, and then he came out and said, "O Byzantines, Abu Sufyan,
Okay.
right? O Byzantines, if success is your desire and if you seek right guidance and want your empire to remain, then give a pledge of allegiance to this prophet." Now, here's my problem. This is in Sahih al-Bukhari.
Okay.
Sahih means trustworthy, it means reliable.
Yeah.
For something to be Sahih, every level in the isnad has to have good memory, good character, precise recollection. Yeah, they have to be on the deen, they have to know the haqq, right? These are some of the criteria for being Sahih, agreed?
Yeah.
Right. This story is clearly fictitious, and we know it's fictitious for two reasons. One, it's claiming to have knowledge of the private correspondence of the Roman Emperor. Two, it's claiming to have knowledge about the private meeting of the elites of the Roman Empire.
Yeah, because Abu Sufyan was there.
Right. No. Was Abu Sufyan one of the elites of the Roman Empire?
He was one of the listeners or talkers with Herakles.
No, listen. Listen carefully. This is after his meeting with Abu Sufyan. This is after he interviews Abu Sufyan. You know the big lengthy interview he does with Abu Sufyan?
Yeah.
And then the letter from the Prophet arrives and he reads the letter.
Yeah.
This is after that meeting. So that meeting is no longer happening. Abu Sufyan is no longer there.
Okay.
Right, it's just Heraclius.
Okay.
And then the Roman elites. But clearly, this hadith is claiming to have knowledge that Abu Sufyan could not have known.
I'll have to check first.
Yes, you can tell it. Look. Look, it says it after hearing that. Listen, he said, after hearing that, Heraclius remarked, "The sovereignty of the Arabs has appeared." Heraclius then wrote a letter to his friend in Rome, who was as good as Heraclius in knowledge. Heraclius then left for Homs. So he's now left Abu Sufyan, and he's now in Homs. And then the hadith continues to claim to know the knowledge of a private letter and of a private meeting of the Roman elites.
So Abu Sufyan wasn't with them.
It couldn't have been, because Abu Sufyan was not one of the Roman elites.
But it says here that
هنا وسار هرقل إلى حمص فلم يرمي
بيتكلم على ابو سفيان ايش؟
حتى أتاه
بيتكلم عليه بس قول لي
حديث
ايوه عن ايش؟ عن ابو سفيان وين؟
لما وراه صور الأنبياء آدم
مين ورا
وعيسى
مين
هرقل وراه
مين؟
هرقل وراه أبو سفيان
ايوه ما قد درسنا ذا الشيء
إلا
ما اخذنا وراه صورة الانبياء وين كان في كاميرا ايام زمان
لا آدم سأل الله إنه ياخذ صور الأنبياء
ايوه اول مرة اسمع ذا الحديث
عيسى وموسى
ايوه حرف الحديث
But that's slightly getting off the topic. We're not talking about that, we're talking about this hadith.
Okay.
And in this hadith, we've got Heraclius. We've got Heraclius. No need to be offensive, Mushrikeen. Right?
she's asking what's the problem there.
The problem is that the hadith contains a lie. And it is a Sahih al-Bukhari contains a forgery, it contains a lie.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah, go for it.
Is that the first time you talk about this hadith, about this matter with us, or?
Well, it's the first time I've talked to you about it.
But the other people, what do they respond about that one?
They usually run away.
No, that's impossible.
That's true. Ali Dawa runs away. Green Lantern runs away. Muhammad Hijab runs away. Shamsi runs away. Mansoor runs away. Hashim runs away.
ايش يبغى ايش
هو
يبغى
إخواننا نكفر.
The point is that what I'm trying to get you to see, here's why this is important. If Sahih al-Bukhari contains a forgery and a lie, but yet it wasn't picked up by Imam Bukhari, when he didn't realize that it was a lie, it means that other lies could have got into Bukhari. And you use Bukhari to understand the Quran. So if you're using a book that's full of forgeries and you don't know which are the forgeries and which are the real, it means that you could be disobeying Allah without meaning to.
Abu Sufyan was at first a businessman and a man of wealth. So there is many ways that he could get this knowledge. It could be from one of the people on this meeting or any other way.
Right.
It's not impossible.
This is a claim, but it is unlikely.
I would say one of the things that could happen.
This is a claim, but it is unlikely. And the reason why it's unlikely is because what happened. Here's why we know.
Do you believe the first half of the hadith?
I don't believe any part of this hadith.
Any part?
Any part of this. The entire hadith is a forgery and a lie.
As Abu Sufyan didn't meet Heraclius.
No, Abu Sufyan never met. The whole hadith is just propaganda.
But okay.
Because when think about it.
Sufyan had really, I think, at least once a year he went to Sham or to the Levant.
Yeah, that's what you believe.
Yeah.
But that's
like an okay thing. He's just a businessman doing business.
This hadith is Let me explain why this is a lie. I'll show it to you why it's a lie. Firstly, the first reason is access to private knowledge. The second reason is this secret meeting. But what's important about this meeting? Listen carefully, right? On that, Heraclius invited all the heads of the Byzantines to assemble. He ordered that all the doors of his palace be closed. So this is a secret meeting amongst the elites. So Abu Sufyan would not be there. Then it goes on like this. Then he came out and said, "O Byzantines, if success is your desire, and if you seek guidance and you want your empire to remain, then give a pledge of allegiance to this prophet." In other words, this hadith is saying that Heraclius wanted to become Muslim.
Well, it's not the only one. The king of Habasha also became Muslim.
One second. Because I'm not talking about the king of Habasha. I'm talking about the emperor of Rome.
Okay.
Right? On hearing the views of Heraclius, the people ran towards the gates of the palace like onagers who found the doors closed. Heraclius realized their hatred towards Islam. And when he lost the hope of them embracing Islam, he ordered that they should be brought back in audience. Now let me explain something that you don't understand, right? As a Roman, as a historian. If a Roman emperor had given one of his rivals an excuse to topple him as Roman emperor, they would have killed him and they would have replaced him. By this point, the Roman Empire had just fought a war against the Persians, a crusade, to bring back the true cross.
Okay.
So they'd fought against the Zoroastrians as Christians, and Heraclius had led that war. That's like Umar and Abu Bakr, after fighting jihad for Muhammad, suddenly go, I don't feel like being Muslim anymore. I want to become a Christian. It doesn't make any sense. These people were committed to their religion. Heraclius was committed to the religion of Christianity. The idea that he wanted to abandon Christianity is a completely false idea. We know the history. We know the biography of Heraclius. We have it.
So he might be like he's
No.
a human being at the end.
We know the biography. The thing is, what you don't realize is we have our own biographies about Heraclius.
Okay.
We have the story of Heraclius. You can read it. You can read the history of Heraclius. Heraclius was a devoted Christian until his dying day. That is the history of Heraclius. This is a forgery and a lie, because at the time that this was created, Muslims and Romans were at war with one another, and Muslims had just conquered Christian land. And this was propaganda to try to cause disillusionment amongst the Christians. Look, even your emperor wanted to become Christian. It's a way of trying to say to Christians under Sharia, you should become Christian because your emperor wanted to. In any war, you spread propaganda, don't you? Yes, of course. So this is an example of propaganda. But it's being told as a true story in Sahih al-Bukhari.
If it is a propaganda, did
Yeah.
it succeed?
Well, eventually, yes, it did, sadly. Lots of Christians did become Muslim, didn't they?
Thank you.
But that doesn't get Sahih al-Bukhari out of the problem. Because you've got a forgery inside Sahih al-Bukhari. You have a lie inside Sahih al-Bukhari.
That's your claim.
Yes, and I'm giving you my reasons that you can now reply to. So why do you think I'm wrong?
Because I have to make my research before I respond to you. You're talking about a matter you're used to like for 10 years, but it's my first time hearing it, so I have to do my research before I respond to you.
That is fair. I understand that. But for now then, the claim stands unchallenged. You haven't challenged it. You haven't challenged it. When you're ready to challenge it, feel free to come back and we can do that. Go on then, try.
Well, I only can think of one, which is the age of Joseph.
What about it?
The prophet.
Yes.
I think in one page it says one age and the other page has another age.
I can get out my Bible now.
Yeah.
And you can both use Google.
Okay.
And I bet you won't find the age of Joseph in the Bible. So get out your Google.
Do you know the matter I'm talking about?
Yes, I do. And it's not in the Bible.
And how do they show it on the
So what's happening there is that your Muslim da'i are lying to you about Christianity. Because they're trying to tell you that there's a Bible that gives the age of Joseph. They are lying to you when they say that. The da'i of the Muslims are lying to the ummah. They are giving you da'if reports. They're giving you da'if reports because they want you to stay Muslim and close your minds to Christianity.
Do you think the Bible is 100% correct?
In every single matter, no, we wouldn't make that claim. That's not our belief. That's a Muslim belief about the Quran.
How is that a holy book when there's some mistake?
Right. So wait 1 second. He asked a question. It's fair that I answer the question. Are you listening?
Yep.
Right. Would you agree with me? Would you agree with me that it would be unfair of me to challenge you about something you never claimed to be? If I said to you, "You're not the best footballer in the world,"
Yeah.
what would you say in reply to that?
I never say that.
Exactly. So if the Bible never claimed to be perfect in every regard, do you agree that it would be unfair to say, well, it's got some things wrong, so therefore it's not perfect? Would you agree?
Yeah.
Right, now, one second. Does the Quran make the claim that it is without error?
Exactly. Yeah.
So if I was to find an error in the Quran, would that disprove the Quran?
Of course. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So what we can do is we can look at what your issues are in the Bible, and we can discuss them according to what the Bible says about the Bible, and then we can look at problems that I have with the Quran, and we can judge the Quran according to what the Quran says about the Quran. Is that fair?
Yeah. It is
Right.
fair. But
So what's your problem with the Bible?
The thing is, you're claiming to be a correct religion.
Yes.
And to be a correct religion, you should have no mistakes.
No, that's an Islamic belief.
No, because
Yes, an Islamic belief.
you're getting your religion from God.
Right.
So you can't say that God make mistakes.
Right. So allow me to reply.
Yeah.
In 2 Timothy chapter 3, verse, I think it's 15, it says this: all scripture is God-breathed and profitable for reproof, correction, and training in righteousness, so that the man of God might be equipped for every good work. In other words, the Christian scripture claims that it is sufficient to teach us how to be godly men and women. That is the claim of the Bible. It does not claim to be a scientific textbook. It does not claim to be a book of geology. It does not claim to be a book of biology. Okay? So if you were to find a geological, scientific, or biological problem in the Bible, and I haven't yet seen one, but let's pretend that you do, it would not affect my faith.
That's like making an excuse for yourself.
No, I'm being consistent
like
to my
I
own
say-
religion's teaching.
It's like saying, it's like I write a book and I say, this book may contain mistakes, but it's a religion and do follow it. And when you ever find any mistake, you will say, oh, the book said it may contain a mistake.
Right, what it's saying is, if you want to know how to serve God, read this book. What it's saying is, if you want to learn about biology, go somewhere else.
Okay.
But, 1 second, your Quran claims to be free of any contradiction and error, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does.
But your Quran claims that sperm is made between the backbone and the ribs. Do you believe that sperm is made between the backbone and the ribs?
That's a scientific,
No.
biology thing to respond.
Yes, in the Quran it says that. Great, come in, madam.